guy called me and said, like, I want to do business with you, but I want to come to 2 of your jobs first, and I want to watch you work.
Jesse Berkshire is the founder of Proud American Electrical and Solar, who turned Midwest grit into a thriving, decade-long Colorado business.
I grew up in the Midwest in Indiana, farm town, very kind of rural area. Once I got out of high school, I did random construction jobs. I ended up moving here around 23, 24 years old.
What was the moment you were in where you realized I could do this myself? Like, what gave you the confidence to really step out and do that?
That was the kind of light bulb moment where it's like, you actually can do this for yourself.
With solar, what are some of the more common questions that you have to answer when someone is thinking about making that move?
The tax credit is a big one.
Why Colorado Springs?
It's one of those places where
Welcome back to the COS Business Podcast, the #1 podcast in Colorado Springs.
Today, our highlighted sponsor is Reveal Med Spa. Check them out at revealmedspa.com, I'm pretty sure. We'll edit that out if it's not.
Well, we're super excited to have our guest on. He's a sponsor of our show. He's been on as a sponsor for quite some time now. It takes some time to book the show as well. But Jesse with Proud American Electrical and Solar, thank you so much for coming on our show, man. We had some time to chat before this show, so we've got to know you even better before we kind of turn on the cameras. But first and foremost, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing your story. How are you doing today, man?
Good. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I've been kind of seeing you guys around for a little while. I think that you're doing good work. I like the podcast. Like I was saying previously, our admin, she's all about it. She watches it every week.
That's awesome. I mean, it's so good. Like, especially like when we've been putting in all the years, Andrew, a year before me, even jumping on, like, to hear things like that and to be recognized a little bit more in the community, which is kind of cool and interesting at the same time, right? Of like, finally all that labor, hard work, people are starting to put eyeballs on it. So that's awesome. And it's Gypsy, right? That's
Gypsy. Yep.
That's awesome.
Shout out to Gypsy.
Yeah. Well, we were talking a little bit before the show started today about your background, but you're not originally from Colorado Springs. You actually have a Midwest kind of, upbringing and roots. Talk a little bit about that and like what got you started in this huge journey with your company.
Yeah. So, I grew up in the Midwest in Indiana, farm town, very kind of rural area. Once I got out of high school, I did random construction jobs. I ended up moving here around 23, 24 years old. I worked for a temp service out here. I got hired by Solar City. They were doing the Fort Carson, Peterson, and Schriever Air Force bases. And so they brought us down and, had 15 crews kind of running through the bases doing all the solar.
Yeah, that's a similar story to me, actually.
Yeah, he came down with Fort Carson, right?
Yeah,
working
down to Fort Carson because doing the gutters and stuff. So
cool.
They had a bunch of crews running through there, and we were just one that they pulled out from the Midwest as well too, Kansas City. So yeah,
cool. Real cool. I mean, that's I think Colorado is one of those places that the reason that there's so many transplants here is just that there's so much opportunity, and if you're a hard worker, the sky's the limit.
So true, and there's so much good like work that's stable income here with the military installations here that bring people in for you, and then like I don't know if it's like you guys, but like even now, like I've been in and out of Colorado Springs since 1994, but like the mountains still like I'm like, holy crap, we're so lucky to wake up to Pikes Peak. Is that the same for you when you came?
100%. Yeah. Even now, like, when I take trips out of Colorado and come back, I look at the mountains and I'm like, man, I love it here. I wouldn't change it for the world.
Feels like home.
100%.
Yeah.
I love it when you like fly in. If you do happen to fly in from the south, you can kind of see Pikes Peak and you're like, man, I live there. It's just the coolest thing, right? Just to kind of be here. There's something gravitating about the mountains for people. I don't know what it is, but
100%.
There's just something about it, right?
Well, it's the adventure. It's the unknown. There's so much to do here, whether it's hiking, biking, I mean, you name it.
Do you have like, I know like, we'll get into a little bit more your background, but like, do you have a lot of inclination to get into the mountains? Do you hike? Is that some of the things you do in your free time outside of business, which we'll get into, but like, what do you do now that you're here in Colorado Springs for the past 10, 12 years now?
Yeah. So, I occasionally hike. I do a lot of biking.
Nice.
I do downhill mountain biking.
Dude.
There's so much good riding around here. If you guys do any mountain biking, I mean, Cheyenne Mountain has trails on trails. You can go to Red Rocks open space.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a beginner, Garden of the Gods even has some trails that are kind of beyond the rocks that you can hit. And I mean, it's one of those things where, I did road biking in the Midwest where you would ride from, one town to another, right? And then you come out here and road biking is a little different. And so a lot of people just do mountain biking. And so, probably 2 or 3 years after I got here, I started doing mountain biking and I don't do it as much as I used to, just because we're busy. But honestly, I try to, in the summertime, I try to hit at least 1 or 2 rides a week.
That's awesome, man. Wow. And like downhill mountain biking, especially, like that's a kind of an adrenaline junkie kind of stuff, right? Because like you fall going downhill mountain biking, like you're going to eat it pretty bad, right?
Yeah. It's everybody goes at their own pace, right? Yeah. It depends on how you're feeling that day. But, I try to keep it pretty mid-level. I don't go too crazy. I like enjoying myself. I don't like wrecking.
Yeah, I feel you, man. Well, let's talk about Proud American and like the whole like origination behind the name. Love the name. Very proud American guy myself. And we love our country for sure. But like, why that name? Why did you start it? Walk us through some of those things as well.
Yeah. So, I've been doing construction my whole life. And initially when we started out, we were doing construction, and Pikes Peak Regional Building Department wanted us to basically mentor under another contractor in town for 2 years before they would give us a license.
Oh, wow.
At that point, we were already credible enough to get electrical licenses, so we kind of did a pivot and just went to electrical. We kind of cut out the construction, but we used to be Proud American Construction, and then the people that really trained me to work in Colorado were very hard-nosed, very old school veterans, very, this is not your first rodeo type of guys. And so, that's really where the name originated. Was these guys were veterans. You got to be proud of what you do. You have to take care of your customers and value the process and really put effort into making sure that you're doing things correctly. And that's really where it came from. I helped a friend, he tore out the bathroom wall on his exterior, because there was some kind of water damage. And when we put it back together, it was, a smooth transaction. Everything was nice and tight, and the window was sealed up nice and tight. And that's really the day where, we started Proud American, and he helped me come up with the name. And it's something that, just everybody seems to. I've only had 1 or 2 people in the whole time we've been in business that really haven't cared for the name. But for the most part, it's a military area, so we get a good reception pretty much everywhere.
We'd like to take a quick break and thank our sponsors.
Pioneer Rodeo.
The Pioneer Rodeo is back August 15th through the 17th at Norris Penrose Event Center with 2 nights of rodeo and wild demolition derby finales.
Tickets go on sale June 1st. Details at pioneerrodeo.com.
Bolton Co. Executive Coaching.
Up feels better than stuck. You know that. But in this market, how do you get unstuck and get ahead as an executive?
Our guy, JB, is an executive coach at Bolton Co. Coaching, where he believes you don't have to change who you are. You just need an injection of effectiveness and a proven competitive edge roadmap for your way up. Head to boltonco.net. That's boltonco.net. ProLift Garage Doors. ProLift Garage Doors are your locally owned and operated residential and commercial garage door experts. From fast repairs and smooth replacements to routine tune-ups, they keep your doors running like new.
Go with the pros at ProLift Garage Doors.
Visit proliftdoors.com to learn more. Be Our Guest Getaways. Be Our Guest Getaways specializes in Disney cruise resort and theme park vacations.
Planning a Disney vacation can be stressful. Let Be Our Guest Getaways provide you with concierge-level service for free.
Learn more at beourguestgetaways.com. That's beourguestgetaways.com.
Planet Duct. Planet Duct is the #1 choice for professional air duct cleaning in Colorado Springs in southern Colorado. With state-of-the-art equipment and top-tier service, they make sure the air in your home or business is clean and allergen-free. Breathe easier with Planet Duct. Learn more at planetduct.com.
Awesome Home Services. Awesome Home Services delivers top-notch HVAC solutions for your home. Whether you need heating, cooling, or system maintenance, they ensure your comfort year-round. Visit awesomeservice.com for your HVAC needs. That's awesomeservice.com.
Proud American Electrical and Solar.
Give Proud American Electrical and Solar a call today for all your electrical and solar needs. They are locally owned and operated business right here in Colorado Springs. If you're looking for information on solar, this is the company you will want to call. Check out their website at proudamericansolar.com. Use promo code COS Business for a 5% discount today.
Pinnacle Advanced Primary Care.
Pinnacle Advanced Primary Care offers affordable, accessible healthcare with a focus on you. They provide exceptional primary care without the hassle of insurance barriers. Experience a patient-centered approach. Learn more at pinnacleapc.com.
And now let's get back to the show. It's kind of interesting to hear that people didn't like the name because it's like a nationalistic type of name. And that's pretty interesting to me.
I think a lot of things can get politically charged when you bring America into it. And that's kind of where people come from sometimes.
Right.
But, you know, my thing is like, I love the ability to be whoever I want to be. And that's, you know, that's ultimately how we became Proud American is like, you know, I got sick of the rat race, the 9 to 5, you know, I felt like there was something more that I could be doing and that, you know, and there was more purpose for me other than just, you know, working for somebody. And that's, you know, it's one of those things where, when you know that you're over it, like, you know, and that it's time for the next step, you just kind of leap and you don't even think about what's there. You just go.
How did you know it was, possible for you? Like what was the moment you were in where you realized I could do this myself? Like what gave you the confidence to really step out and do that?
Yeah. You know, there was a point where I was working for a company in town and, you know, I was roping new houses. Construction was down a little bit and I was getting more side work than I was, you know, my 40-hour week. And it turned into a situation where, you know, the company started sending us to houses that were weeks and months away from being ready because they were just trying to get work for the guys. And I realized, you know, it's like I could sit here and, you know, waste my time going to these projects that aren't ready, or, you know, I could go do this other work that I have sitting here and it's just stacking up and stacking up. And, you know, that was the kind of light bulb moment where it's like, you know, you actually can do this for yourself. You just have to, you know, you just have to do it.
Is the work coming from like word of mouth? Like how do people know that you're doing it on the side as well too?
Yeah. So for the first few years we were in business, I'm going to say 80% of our business was through word of mouth. Some of it was through websites like Home Advisor, Angie's List, you know, Home Guide, things like that, just random places. But, you know, we weren't big enough to really pay for marketing or lead generation at that point. So it was really like do a good job for people and then they tell their friends and then they tell their neighbors. And, you know, next thing you know, we went from just me doing it by myself to having a helper, to having 3 guys, to having 4 guys. And, you know, it just grew from there.
The demand is that high?
You know, not initially, you know, that took 6 years. You know, we were kind of in a situation where I was very adverse to marketing at first. You know, I was very kind of headstrong about it. Thought, you know, you shouldn't have to put all this money out to gain these customers. And what I realized is that it's not putting the money out to gain the customers. It's putting the money out to make yourself visible, right? It's not about, you know, you're buying these customers. It's like if no one can see you, then it doesn't matter how good you are or your work is. And that's really kind of where when we shifted our business model from referral business to more marketing and more lead generation, more exposure, you know, it definitely added to our bottom line, you know, multiples.
It's so true. And like, I think a lot of folks get it wrong, especially in the beginning when they're learning marketing, is like, you can put money in, and yeah, there's different avenues, right? There's social media posting, there's ads, there's email, there's all these different things that can get really daunting and overwhelming for people who just don't know those things. But really, like what it comes down to is like you're garnering like a pipeline of people who either will, not be a customer for a year, 2 years, or they might be a customer today, but you're building your pipeline. You're building an audience to eventually either be a customer or to be a customer today. And then you nurture the whole series of people and gaining trust in them. Because the one thing that we know, and we all know this here, is like we get bombarded by ads every single day. So like everybody that we, try to market to in businesses, they're conditioned to ignore ads, right? So there's other strategies to garner trust. And we were talking about this before we got on the podcast of like gaining trust and what that looks like and how much content people need to digest in order to trust your brand and like identify you as a trusted expert. It just all makes sense, right? And so I think that's so great that you guys have made that pivot. It's so important. And like you said, like you can help more people out with integrity and real types of construction, or I guess now just, electrical and solar, but before it was all those things, right? And it's so important. Like you were talking about before, like you're learning through these mentors how to do things the right way. And I feel like in that whole thing of construction background, it's like, okay, everybody can do it, but who does it the right way? That's like super important, especially with electrical and solar. I know we're going to get into solar because that's been another big pivot for your business as well. But talk about the main differences with you guys and what makes it sounds like you guys ran off a word of mouth. So you guys probably did a pretty dang good job for people to keep feeling your business. But what really sets apart your business?
Yeah. We have great word of mouth referral business even still to this day. I think whenever there's a situation that comes up, and in business, there's always situations, whether it's, someone thought that they were going to get this extra work, or someone didn't realize it was going to cost this much, or whatever the situation is. And the one thing that's given us leverage in business is to, not walk over $1 to pick up a dime. And, if it costs me $100 to make this customer happy, I can chalk that up to cost of acquisition and say, their referral is worth $100 to me. Their referral is worth more than $100 to me. And so, when you spend money on marketing and ads and lead generation, and then you see these other avenues that are so low cost and all you have to do is do a good job, I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, nothing's gonna be better than word of mouth if you do a dang good job, right? It's so true. Talk about like when you guys were broaching into solar, because I think that's super fascinating that you guys were able to take that on. We've been looking through some of your content and seeing some of the cool work that goes with that. But like, how did that come into play in your business? Because we know like how electrical kind of came into play. How did that come into play?
Yeah. So we were doing electrical for 3-4 years before we even went back into solar. When I came out to Colorado, I did solar for 2 years straight, and then moved on and got my electrical licensing and started my career after that. But the solar transition was really just one of those things where one of our customers who we were doing an electrical project for, asked us like, hey, do you guys do this? And I was like, yeah, we can do it. And I had never even considered selling solar or installing solar. It was more like, it felt like it was something that was kind of outside. It was bigger than what I could handle at the time. But then what I realized is, everything is a bigger deal until you figure it out. And so, it took us a good 2 years of, 3 to 7, 10 jobs a year. We were doing probably 80% electrical work, 20% solar work. We were subcontracting a good portion of that work, which, in the solar industry is just one of the worst spots that you can be is a subcontractor, because you're the lowest guy on the totem pole at that point. And so we played that game for a couple of years, and then we got sick of the hassle of dealing with larger kind of countrywide companies that were just coming in and selling as many jobs in the area as they could and just subcontracting it all out. And so, after a couple years of kind of trial and error, we really started marketing for ourselves. We found a couple decent sites that we could really, boost our ratings on. I started asking people for reviews. I went 5 years in business and never asked anybody for a Google review.
That's huge to start doing, for sure.
I mean, absolutely. And so, once we started getting these reviews and building the credibility, even pictures, things like the more pictures you post on your Google business listing, the more engagement you can get from the people that are actually interested. And then they can see, okay, you didn't just do 1 or 2 jobs, you've done hundreds of jobs.
And that's free marketing too. Like, you don't even have to pay for that.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, think about, I remember when I worked at a marketing agency like 8 years ago, and like the stat was like, especially for business like yours, like they said 87% of all customers look up the reviews before making a buying decision in your industry.
Home services,
100%.
Right?
And it makes sense, right? Like we all do that too. We're like, okay, what's Proud American Electrical and Solar? Okay, what are the reviews? How many reviews do they have? What's some of the work they've done? It's like all through a Google business profile, you can find all that information. You don't have to go to a website for that, right?
No, and it kind of goes back to, that's another thing. So if I spend that $100 to make a customer happy, and they leave us a good review, that gets us another job down the line, even if they don't refer us directly. I mean, I think a lot of people are worried about, the nickel and dime type situations, and what people want to know is that they're being taken care of. And most of the time they're willing to pay those extra costs, right? They just want to know that you're willing to take care of them.
Yeah, it's so true, man. And like with solar, I have so many questions, and I'm sure you get those all the time, but it might be good for our viewers too at home. Like, what is the main pull? And like, I guess you can dispel any myths here with solar specifically, from moving to traditional, electrical setup to moving solar. Like, what are some of the more common questions that you have to answer when someone is thinking about making that move?
Yeah. It's going to be we always try to educate. That's our main goal, is to educate. We're electrical contractors first and foremost, right? We do sales because that's part of the industry. That's part of the job, right? But we want to make sure that every system that we're selling, that we've educated the customer correctly, and that they're confident and we're confident that the system is going to do exactly what we promised. I think one of the biggest things that, I get asked when I'm talking to homeowners about solar is, the clarification on some of these loan things. There's a lot of information to be had. And what happens is, not every sales rep is created equal. Just like not every electrician is created equal. Not every podcaster is created equal, right? And so what we see is there's so much misinformation out there that even sales reps get information that they believe to be accurate, and it's just not. And so we spend a lot of time kind of clarifying some of those things. The tax credit is a big one. A lot of people think that, they're just gonna, get a tax check back and it's all good. And to an extent, like there's a little bit of, truth to statements like that. But it's a lot more nuanced than that. And I think that there's a lot of industry-wide sales reps that will go out and try to one call close somebody. And in this industry, it's like, if you didn't know how to drive a car and I threw a car in front of you and said, hey, just go ahead and do it, right? It's going to be a lot harder for you to do it correctly. And so, I think educating customers on what's, and also giving them the resources to verify what we're saying, right? So if we say, Colorado's offering a battery rebate, we're also going to give you the state battery rebate page so that you can see, hey, this is the form I need to fill out. It's not just something where, we're kind of saying something and then letting you figure it out on your own.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then like, do people call based off of just like wanting to convert fully to solar, or are they a customer of yours previously? You've done an electrical setup with them. They're like, man, like Proud American, like did our service like 3 or 4 years ago. Let me give them a ring. I have some questions regarding solar and what that takes. Like where do those customers typically come in from?
So we don't typically we don't do any drip marketing for our existing customers. We'll call and do like 12-month checkups, 24-month checkups. But sorry, I lost your question.
No, it's okay. No, it makes it's kind of a harder question, but if you think about it, like, I want to know how a majority of your solar customers come in. Are they just coming because they want to do solar and they've never met you before? Or are they like older customers who have done work with you and they trusted you? You did a good job. You did their electrical before, and they're like, shoot, I have questions about solar. Let me call Jesse because he, did our electrical work 3 or 4 years down the line, or I guess in the past.
We get a couple of those a year where somebody we've done work for in the past has called us just to, maybe they moved to a new house, or even solar customers will call us and say, hey, we want to get a battery system now. I would say the majority of our customers, I'm going to say at least half of them come from our Google business listing. Google is our strongest presence online. We're building our Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. But
Google's the most important one, though.
Yeah.
We spent years building the Google page out,
Smart.
And so I think the biggest thing with the Google stuff is that the leads that come in are significantly more qualified than any other avenue that we use, hands down.
Yeah. A lot of that is because they're intentional, because they're already actively putting in those keywords that are relevant to the services that they need right now. You're not getting hit on Facebook when you're looking up puppies and you're like, oh, electrical, like a Proud American Electrical and Solar. Like, I don't need that done right now. So it's more intentional traffic, which is awesome. That's so great. And that's so smart of you guys. And like what we always say, like on a marketing point of view, is like, just get good at one thing and just stick to it and make that, like, pick your pony and just do that great. And then you can move over to some of the other things once you kind of get a full, well-oiled machine on the other things. Don't try to be great at everything, because everybody's going to have shiny object syndrome of like, okay, have you done this? Have you done that? It's like, I have, because I'm a marketer, but that's my job,
Right.
Like, business owners don't have time to be like getting everything full steam. And Andrew, I mean, he's done marketing. I'm sure he's seen some of those things too, of like people trying to do too much at once, or, they kind of fall and they get spread too thin.
Yeah. I know you tried to lead me up on that. But no, that's, exactly, man. Like, there's a lot of things that you can do. I like to try and do all of them. Like Marcus said, we are in the marketing aspect arena of it.
Yeah.
And with like Facebook and stuff like that, it's a longer play. It's like it takes a lot more work to build up the presence on there for when someone has that intentional, they are thinking of you, you're on their mind, their visibility, their awareness and stuff like that. But yeah, I think Google's the most important one when it comes to like specifically your type of business.
Service-based businesses for sure.
We're going to take a quick break to thank our sponsors. Reveal Med Spa. Look and feel your best at Reveal Med Spas. With personalized plans that deliver real results, radiant skin, restored confidence, and natural rejuvenation.
At Reveal Med Spa, we see you. More than just aesthetic and wellness treatments, we provide a safe, judgment-free space where you feel valued, heard, and supported.
Visit revealmedspas.com.
I think it is literally just that too. We'll just double check. Book your next session at revealmedspas.com. That's revealmedspas.com.
Home Day. Buying a home shouldn't be overwhelming. Home Day empowers you to save on your mortgage by putting you in control of the process. Lower your cost and take the next step towards home ownership with ease. Visit gethomeday.com today.
Fast Signs. From banners to vehicle wraps, Fast Signs delivers custom visual solutions to help your business stand out. Their team ensures your message is clear, bold, and effective. Get your signage needed handled at fastsigns.com. That's fastsigns.com. Epic Eyewear. Stylish, affordable, and designed for adventure, Epic Eyewear has the sunglass and eyewear you need to see life more clearly. From the mountains to the beach, protect your eyes with high-quality frames and lenses. Check out their collection at epiceyewear.com. And by the way, Andrew, we do have a special discount, COSBP 15, for 15% off, I believe.
Cars Helping Charities. Turn your unused cars into a meaningful contribution with Cars Helping Charities. They make it easy to donate your vehicle to support local causes. One of the local charities that we like to support on behalf of Cars Helping Charities, actually, and part of their sponsorship is Mattersville. and check them out too.
They're awesome. They are a tiny house community for veterans suffering with PTSD. They have a property out in Yoder, Colorado, and then they also have one in Sedalia, Colorado as well.
Donate today and make a difference. Visit carshelpingcharities.org. That's carshelpingcharities.org.
Dream Accounting Solutions.
Take the stress out of managing your books with Dream Accounting Solutions. They provide reliable expert accounting services tailored to small businesses. Simplify your finances at dreamaccountingsolutions.com. That's dreamaccountingsolutions.com.
Exponential Impact. Exponential Impact is driving innovation and entrepreneurial success in Colorado Springs. Supporting startups with mentorship, funding, and community resources, they help businesses grow and thrive. Learn more about their impact at exponentialimpact.com. That's exponentialimpact.com.
And now let's get back to the show.
What are some of the things that you've learned through like implementing solar? Because like I have so many questions about like, do you actually save money, or do you not start saving money until you're 20? Like when is that like point of like the returns start coming through? And maybe it's different for everybody. Maybe that's kind of a question that's too broad, but like educate us on that, because I'm sure a lot of our viewers are like, they're curious about it.
Right. So, there's a couple quick ways that we can gauge, someone's return on investment. Realistically, cash is king. Anytime you pay cash for any service, you're going to save all kinds of financing costs. The cost of the system is based on the complexity of the job, right? So if we have a, 2-story Spanish tile house with a 3-story drop on the backside where we're working, that's going to be different than a single-story ranch.
Makes sense.
Shingle roof.
Mm-hmm.
And so return on investment can vary, but if you pay cash, you're looking about 10 to 12 years return on investment on average. If you're going with a good, legitimate company, that's going to be kind of where you sit. If you finance, your return on investment goes out to 20 years-ish. Yeah. There's factors there, right? But for the most part, when you do cash, you get the tax credit back yourself.
Gotcha.
When you finance with a solar financing company, they require you to put that tax credit back into your loan to re-amortize it so that you maintain a low payment. If you don't, it will automatically re-amortize after 18 months, and it will boost your payment to reflect that you did not make that deposit.
Interesting. Yeah, and I always have the question of also like hail. Like I always think about it. I'm like, Colorado, we get a lot of hail. I mean, that's why, when people call the roofers, like right when there's bad hailstorm, their phones start ringing off the hook, right? Yeah, so what's the same thing is it the same thing with solar too, or?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's hail season around here, and every year kind of we go through, about every 3 years we get a big one. We probably do in between 20 and 50 solar detach and resets each year. And basically what that looks like is 95% of the time our panels are pristine, right? Nothing wrong with them. We just have to remove them so that the roofers can replace the roof. We reattach them and then hook everything back up. They're super strong. They're rated with the 1-inch hailstone at 100 miles an hour. It's a tempered glass panel. So if it breaks, you'll see it.
Wow. I did not know that. That makes a lot of sense then. So they're pretty, they're probably better than a normal like roof shingle.
Yeah. They're definitely way stronger than a roof shingle. They're more comparable to like a 50-year comp roof shingle.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Are those jobs, are those less profitable jobs? Are they more profitable? Like, is that a good % of your revenue, total revenue?
For
doing just the hell
resets?
Hell resets, yeah.
So I would say it's probably, depending on the year, it can be anywhere from 20% of our revenue,
okay,
to 25, maybe 30, depending on the year. The last giant hailstorm we had come through here, solar was slightly down that year. So that kind of gave us a boost at the end of the year to kind of get through to the next fiscal quarter and kind of figure out what we wanted to do for the new year, 2024. So I would say that we would probably do more of them if we had some kind of like a door knocking team that would go out during those times.
Yeah.
But realistically, what happens is when you have a full schedule, those come in and they kind of bog you down, and so you end up, really kind of running overtime for the season until all your hail jobs are done, and then it's kind of back to business as usual.
You have a lot of verbiage that you've been able to include in this interview so far. That's like definitely of one of a seasoned entrepreneur. I'm sure you didn't start that way. How did you, is this year 6 then for you? Is this the 6th year?
10 years, right?
10 years?
10 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow,
We've
10
been in
year,
business
10-year
for 10
anniversary.
years,
Okay.
yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense. But, when you start, like, you don't know a lot of these things. You're like, my percentage of my revenue was this, fiscal year, quarterly planning, implementing employees, all those different things that go with payroll, all those different things. Like, talk to us through those steps and how you had to learn that while also, trying to run a business and make money and all those different things. Talk about some of those challenges too and what you're plugged into in those early years. And even in year 10, like, you're still learning, right? Like, you're talking about marketing
100%.
things. You're like, the funnel, and like you're learning a lot of the vernacular in all those different spaces, but talk about your like learning experience through the whole process as well.
Yeah. I've watched our growth over the last 10 years, and for the first probably 5 or 6 years, there was no clear vision. It was more like, go and do as much work as I can. I had an accountant that was running my books. Me and 2 guys, we were just going around doing jobs as many as we could. And it wasn't really a strategy for me. It was more just like a means to an end. And once I started hiring people and seeing the traction and kind of seeing some of those things, insurance, overhead costs, we brought in our admin, and she just changed the game for us as far as like our execution, our efficiency, even our just overall capacity for jobs. When you have people that come in that care as much about their job as you do, it's like another motivating force to keep pushing that ball forward. And so, once we got an admin staff, that's really where we leveled up our game. And we work with 2 admin staff, right? And they're Gypsy and Julie. They're great. They're very sweet girls, and they do a ton for Proud American.
That's amazing. And Gypsy was part of the reason why we kind of got in contact for sponsorship too. And she kind of arranged this. She was a fan of the show, which is amazing. So there's so much to be said about like when you have an ace with you for your business. It just changes everything because it's someone who like not only believes in you, but believes in the vision of the company. Talk a little bit more about that, because like that's a special moment, right? It's like that's the true things that take the business to the next level, right?
Absolutely. It's one of those things where when you're a solo entrepreneur and you're running jobs and you're going to estimates and you're, have a couple guys that you're running, it's really hard to cross your T's and dot your I's. It's really hard to be consistent. It's really hard to return all the phone calls that you get. And so, when you have that kind of anchor that can make sure that regardless of what you're doing, what you have to do, right? Because I believe that install and sales are 50%. I believe that they're equal partners in the game, and that if you don't have a good sales team and you don't have a good install team, your ship's gonna sink eventually. And so having that stability, and even as far as knowing, so we get into situations where customers will have a reason for an issue and they'll say something, right? And so me as the customer service rep in that situation, I have to take whatever they say at face value. And so, when I go into those situations, those hard conversations, I know that the people that are talking behind me are being very clear and honest and have integrity in every situation. And so it makes it really easy for me to approach those situations and say, okay, well, let's figure out where this problem is. Let's get it solved. And it's never something where, I have to look too hard, because the girls in the office keep such good receipts, everything from phone calls to text messages to emails. And anytime there's a dispute, all I have to do is say, hey, can you guys give me some information? And I get a whole email full of all the things that, are relevant to the situation. And so having that kind of security when you're, because even if it's for another business, so say, another business calls us up and says, you owe us money and da 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 da. they're going to approach it from a manner where they understand that we're being legitimate in every situation that we can.
Mhm.
And so you never really have to get too stressed about, when people are upset with you or when situations come up, and we don't really have those kind of situations, but it's nice and it's refreshing to know that whenever something does come up, I don't have to stress about, what my staff said to somebody. I don't have to, I don't have to worry about things being skewed or said incorrectly. And it provides comfort for me when I'm not directly involved in situations, because there's a lot on the line, and reputation is one of those things that will make or break a deal. And I mean, we've had deals that people are like, even last week, guy called me and said, like, I want to do business with you, but I want to come to 2 of your jobs first, and I want to watch you work for 2 of your jobs.
Wow.
Was he going to hire you for like a lot of things?
So it is a large solar project with 30 solar panels on a detached barn. We're going to wire the whole barn. We're going to run 300 feet of conduit out to the barn. He's getting a whole home transfer switch on his house. We're basically taking a 400 amp service and we're transferring it over to a battery system that sits out at his pole barn.
Oh my gosh.
It's a big project, and he wants to know that we're qualified and that we're just not, smooth talkers. And so I invite anybody that wants to do business with us to come to any job site that we do and see how we work, because even if I'm not there, I know that the guys that I have are going to hold, every job to the same standard.
Yeah, and you can stand by that too. It's so important to have your bases covered, like you're talking about, like when you're talking about documentation and certain interactions with customers, because something might have been said here, but hey, we caught everything captured. So no matter what miscommunication might happen, we have captured everything. So we can always go back on the documentation, the correspondence, or whatever it might be, to make sure that everything was, at least on your end, covered, right? It's so important, especially when you're talking about work like you guys do, right?
100%. Yeah. And you know what? Nobody's perfect. And so I don't ever assume that it's anybody's fault. I go and look at the information and then digest it and make an educated guess from there. But just knowing that my staff has the integrity, is priceless.
That's awesome, man. Well, 10 years in business is a long time, and it's an interesting time to have kind of come to Colorado Springs too, just because we're kind of on the up curve of like, we're growing. Talk about like coming here, and like, we get this a lot from a lot of our guests, even from, Andrew, when he came here too, about like the community here, the business community here, or even like how a guy in a truck can make a life here. It's like an insane, great blue ocean opportunity here. Talk about some of those opportunities and how it's helped your business as well.
Yeah. I mean, you couldn't have said it any better. The opportunity here is unmatched. I mean, I'm sure there's places that you can go around the country that have a similar opportunity. But what I can tell you is, in service-based businesses, just in general, there's not enough people to do all the work. And despite, minor contraction in the economy, Colorado in general is still growing. Denver's still growing. Colorado Springs is still growing. This market is one of those markets where all you have to do is answer your phone, show up on time, do a good job, and you'll get business. And it's not hard. The hard thing is doing it every day, doing it when you don't want to do it, not making the excuse. We had a customer who we were doing a solar system for, another situation where it's a detached pole barn. We're going to put some solar on there. And we had some trencher guy come in and they trenched out to the pole barn and they hit some landscaping and fixed it. Well, they called us and said, hey, my water's not on. And so 7:00 at night, we went out there and took a look, and sure enough, her water was not on. And it was due to them having a smart Moen shutoff valve that could detect leaks in the system. And when the landscaping was repaired, there was still a minor leak. And so the valve detected it and shut off.
Wow.
And so by the time we got there, we realized what was going on, turned everything back on, and we were good. But it's more important to me to make sure that, my customers are taken care of than it is, if it's 7:00 at night and I don't have anything going on, then I'm going to be there. Right. If I'm out of town, I can't do anything about it. if I have the ability, I'll show up.
Isn't that interesting how business owners, like, that's kind of the thing that makes us different. It's like, I think it's your business, your name's on the line, but like the type of personality to do something like that, where you're sitting down watching TV, you might be relaxing for the day, but a customer who you really care about calls you and says like, hey, like like my water's off. I don't know what's going on. It's dark. You know, I don't know how to fix this issue. Can you possibly come out? I know it's past hours, and you come out. It's so, there's so much of a human aspect to business still today. And I know, you know, there's so many things going on as far as like AI technologies and stuff, but like the human touch, there's nothing better than that human touch. And AI will be part of that too, right? It's going to probably be better, but in some aspects, but it's very interesting, you know, because a lot of the people that we have on the show, they really, really, you can tell they really do care about their customers. It's beyond just making $1. It's building relationships. Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And, you know, for me, it's like every customer involved in the success of Proud American, you know, elevated us to the next level. Right. And so for that, like, I'll be grateful forever.
Yeah, man, that's incredible. Well, we were kind of touching a little bit on it, but like as an entrepreneur here in Colorado Springs, like what do you see the next X amount of years, to call it 5 or 10 years here in the city, it becoming? I'm always curious to see like people from all verticals, all different types of business types and industries, their perspective on what's going on in the city and what they see as the future.
Yeah. Well, you guys are going to see solar change. It's going to be, you know, it's still kind of the Wild West. You know, it's had its kind of, its peaks and valleys over the last 10 years, 20 years even. But I think what's happening is you're seeing the consumer start to switch to more technical install type companies, where previously we would be going up against a ton of sales organizations, people that were just selling, and then they would subcontract out the work. And now, you know, we're seeing a transition from sales orgs to install companies, where people are like, you know, we need to be vertical in the process so that we can maintain a certain amount of quality, a certain amount of consistency, because that's, you know, there's the transfer of information is so heavy throughout the process that, you know, keeping your customers happy can be a chore, right? And so I don't know where I was going with that, but
I mean, it's like the future of the city and the future of solar is what you're talking about, and how it kind of fits into, you know, the environment here locally in Colorado Springs. You're talking about solar and what that looks like as well.
So, you know, we're seeing the sales orgs go out and the install companies come up. We're seeing more roofers and more electricians that are transitioning into solar instead of solar specific companies. What I'll say is that if we were a solar only company, it would be extremely hard for us to deal with the peaks and valleys of the industry. You know, even as far as the whole tariff situation, for, you know, the last 3 weeks prior to the 90-day tariff announcement, I mean, our suppliers were going crazy. They're talking about, you know, boosting prices here and there, and we don't know about supply. And so people were just going nuts. And now, you know, they release a 90-day pause and the industry's like, oh yeah, nothing happened. Like, we're good. And so the fact that we're electricians too gives us so much stability in the market. And that's any solar company, whether it's a roofing and solar company or, you know, and there are solar companies that are out there that only do solar and they can make it, right? It's just, you're fighting against the current. And so if you don't have that kind of bread and butter work that will pay the bills when, you know, when the sun's not shining, it's a lot harder to deal with that kind of the upward pressure when you're getting into tight situations.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I was wondering while you were talking too about, like, you were talking about installs versus sale. Installs is obviously like your fulfillment side of your business, right? Mm-hmm. Do you guys have recurring installs or recurring revenue with a customer, or is it always every single month we got to make new sales and it's not existing customers that you're serving? Talk a little bit about that too, and like the viability of how you make money on a month over month basis as well.
Yeah. So I would say the majority of our business is new each month. We do work with property managers, with real estate agents, with other different companies, verticals, from landscapers to sheetrockers to, I mean, you name it, throughout the construction. So we have a pretty solid workflow coming from repair, service work, general maintenance stuff, but for the most part, I'm going to say 80% of our revenue is newly generated each month.
Dang, that's crazy. So every month you got to kind of like come up with a good plan, and you have these goals, but every month it's like start fresh essentially, and then you got to hit those goals every
100%.
single month.
Yeah, and I keep a spreadsheet that reminds me where we're at. So the thing is, when you're the rainmaker, you have to make rain, and it doesn't matter if there's no rain. You got to make it, and that's kind of where we get into a spot where I say, like, what's the X factor here? Like, what's keeping this moving? And it's everybody, right? If my install guys aren't on point, then we're slowing down. If my office staff isn't getting permits through, we're slowing down, right? So we have a timeline from the time where we sell a job to the time where we install. And every day that we don't hit that timeline, we're burning overhead. And so it's extremely important to me to make sure that our consistency is high, and we know what our financial situation looks like, because we're a cash in, cash out business. We don't go in, we don't have any equity partners. I'm 100% owner. So every decision that we make, it has to benefit the company financially. And sometimes those decisions are harder than others. But as long as you kind of keep that hustle grind mentality and just know, like, hey, it's just how I started. Like, I go to work and I say, I'm going to go to work and I'm going to work every day and I'm going to get things done and things are going to work out. And so now it's just at a bigger scale. And now I'm paying closer attention to what that actually looks like.
Yeah, it's so interesting to look at like numbers differently as you kind of grow as an entrepreneur, because then you kind of start to understand your numbers so much better. Like, like what an actual like new sale means to you versus before, where you thought it was like, for me in the very beginning, I always thought like a new sale, I was like, okay, like I'm going to pay so-and-so to help with this project. So that's the cost of this good sold. But there's so much more that goes into that as far as learning numbers. Is there any of those like learning lessons for you? Like when you were kind of moving, like making sure that you understood your numbers as a new business owner that you've kind of learned along the way this past decade?
Well, documenting where you are and where you want to be is one of the biggest things. My spreadsheet that I keep has the numbers for today, but it also has the numbers for 18 months from now, because I want to see where we should be versus where we are. Right. And I think, there's so much to soak in when you first start in business. And, even when I talk to new business owners and people that are just kind of getting out there, I'm like, don't be too hard on yourself, because you're going to do things that you think are right that are just not right. And it's not anything against you. It's just, you're going to pay one way. You either go to college or you pay to learn the hard way. And so, it's really just one of those things where you have to care about what you do and really try hard to get better and be a good person along the way.
When we're doing some research on you, is there any level of like faith instilled into your business model or mission statement or anything like that? Or is it just kind of like a personal thing for yourself? Or
yeah, it's really just one of those things where you have to want something greater for yourself than where you're at. And that's regardless, they say the grass is always greener on the other side. And it's one of those things where you realize that, the grass is only as green as you make it. Right. And so a lot of people have the power to do whatever they want to do and want to do it. Right. And choose not to, because it's tough. If I thought about all of the bills that I had to pay back then and the things that, the truck payment and the trailer, and we need a saw and we need this and we need that. Instead of just swiping my card and going and getting it and saying like, I'm going to keep working until this works out.
Yeah. And they have the famous saying of the Trough of Sorrow in like startup land. And all it just means is like, when you first start a business, the excitement's super high. You make your first sale, it's even higher. Now you're getting logos, you're getting t-shirts, you're getting stickers or whatever. But then every entrepreneur hits that point where it's like money's going out the door, bank accounts are low, you have a new problem that's presented to you that you don't know the answer to. there's pressure everywhere, financially, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever it might be. What was that moment for you, and how did you get through that moment?
It's tough because every couple years I come to the crossroads where I'm like, man, this sucks. And every time I ask myself, like, am I in a better spot than I was last time I came to this crossroads? And the answer is always yes. It's never no. And so, that's really what keeps me motivated to keep going, is knowing that you don't always have to see the path to know that it's there. And, I've already come this long, and I look back and think, like, the last 10 years have flown by so fast.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where it's all gone. And I, I think like that's going to be the next 10 years too. And so, why sweat the small stuff? I'm really trying to focus on, maintaining a good business model, being a good person, trying to take care of my people and the people around me. And then, hopefully get to the point where I can start helping other people, in their journeys, whether it's business, whether it's, someone wants to start a nonprofit or whatever. But construction is a stepping stone for me for something better, regardless of what that is, or I don't even know what that is, but I know that it's one of those situations where construction has been very good to me, and it continues to be good to me as long as I put in the time that's required. And I would like to one day be able to put that time into helping other people, regardless of whether it's people that go without, or whether it's installing electrical, or Habitat for Humanity. I mean, any of these projects that we can do to fulfill the other side of that need, that human necessity, because we can make money, and money is great, right? And we all have to pay our bills, and we all have to do the things that are required of us. But how do you recharge your battery? And so when you work all the time, you have to find ways to recharge your battery, like mountain biking, right? But I think that helping people in situations where you have the ability to help, and it's not even really taking a lot from you, right? That's just a no-brainer for me.
Where does that come from within you to serve other people and mentor them? Where does that come from?
Well, you might have to cut this part out, because just so you guys know, if I start ranting, and Gypsy was like, "Don't talk about sales. Don't talk about sales," and I was like, "I got it. It's okay." We're part of this capitalist society, and what happens is you get in a situation where you're forced to feed the beast, and there's tons of great things about being a business owner, and it gives you independence, it gives you flexibility, it helps you learn how to be a better person, but also you get backed into this corner that you have to fight your way out of.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that's like when the time comes and I decide that I'm tired of fighting out of the corner, then I'm going to try to take my skill set, take the things that I've learned, and use them for good, because capitalism is a great thing, and I don't want anybody to think that it's not, because it allows somebody with nothing to rise through the ranks and be something, right? But it's also a double-edged sword, where you're like, you get stuck in this rat race, and I'm all about hustling and grinding. But it gets tough sometimes, and you get wore down. And the days when you are worn down and you wake up and you're not feeling it, and you still got to do it, that's kind of where that is part of capitalism as well. Like you can't half heart the situation. You either have to be in it or not. And so, the motivation for me is to eventually get to a situation where people that didn't have the same opportunities as I did can still benefit from the effects of capitalism.
Yeah, man. I mean, it serves your heart, right? To help other people who don't know the path. You had to pay your own level of ignorance tax to get where you are, and you know how painful it is to get there. And if you can help somebody who's maybe from like a modest upbringing get to a spot where they're having some level of success similar to you, or even just on their path, it does something for you, because you can relate to that person who's starting. You can relate
100%.
to all the roadblocks that they're going to come up against and all the hardships. And like, you want to guide them through that. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes they have to go through that to be the entrepreneur they need to be. But sometimes it's just pure pain and just pure ignorance. And if you're anything like me, man, like I'm super hard-headed. I've made the same mistakes over and over again until like the fifth time I'm like, okay, I get it. I'm going to move around that and do it the right way. And so I think that's great. I think like serving what you do is so big. I know when we were looking your information up on the website, and like the one word that stuck with me was community. And like, I find it super interesting with you, because you moved here and you're like early to mid 20s, and like you stuck your flag in the ground. It's like, this is my community. I'm here for the long haul. Why Colorado Springs? Why is this community when you spent majority of your life somewhere else?
I mean, the opportunity here is, Colorado's given me every legitimate opportunity that I've been able to take advantage of. And it's one of those places where it's almost magnetic. People around here love being here. I don't hear anybody say that they hate being in Colorado Springs, right? And when you have this mixture of culture and city and small business, those things just make this melting pot of just this great place where people can be whoever they want to be, right? It doesn't matter whether that's a doctor or whether that's a fighter pilot, an electrician, and that's not the way that it is around the country everywhere. Some people get pigeonholed by their, economic locations, right? And so when you come to a place like this and there's so much opportunity, it's really like you can take somebody who has nothing and allow them the opportunity to make something significantly easier than you can in places where you don't have that opportunity.
It's so true. And then like I was thinking about Andrew the other day, and he can jump in and speak to it too, of course. But like I know for me, like when you move out of your hometown, like a piece of like who you were and your identity is kind of left there, and you get to start something anew. And like it sounds like for you, I mean, a majority of your life here has been like running this business, and maybe it's been like blossoming as a business owner and going through the tribulations and trials, but like growing as a human being. And so like the person that you have become here, you might be closer associated and more proud of being that person. And it's like, it's cool to see, right? Because you become a whole new person in that spot. You're not the same old whatever you were, degenerate when you were younger or whatever it might be, right? And so it's like, it's almost like a rebrand. And so have you had time the past 10 years to kind of look and reflect back on like this new journey that you kind of got to start over here in the Springs, and just look at that and reflect? Have you had time to look at that?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking about, the journey and where we are and where we've come from. And, where I grew up gave me the ability to understand business in the future, right? If I would have grown up in a big city, my priorities would have been different. My upbringing would have been different. My friend group would have been different. I would have been exposed to different things and different aspects of life that I wasn't exposed to. And so, I think that where I grew up gave me a ton of leverage in business, because the narrative was when a bunch of guys from Indiana came out to the bases was that these guys are all farm boys that work really hard. And so, that was a narrative that we continued to push, and we always tried to outwork everybody. And that's something that you can only learn by doing that work. Right. And so, fast forward 10 years later, and without having that upbringing, who knows where I would be now. And I'm sure it would be somewhere fine. Right. But I contribute a lot of the customer service and the, the philosophy behind construction and workmanship and quality to where I grew up. Right. And then I come out here and I see, not everybody is created equal, right? And having the ability to do something that's a better standard than the guy beside you will always get you up the ladder faster, right? So that was really the mindset, when we first came out here, is like, do a good job, impress people with your work, and things will work out.
Oh yeah, brother. That's awesome. Yeah. Have that chip on your shoulder and just outwork the competition, do it
That's
the
it.
right way. And
Mhm.
that's awesome when you have like a moniker like that. You're like, oh crap, the boys are coming out from the Midwest to outwork us, and they're farm boys about to,
Yeah.
out hustle us. That's pretty cool narrative to have for sure. Now for you guys in this business, for Proud American Electrical and Solar, let's put it this way. Like if we were to have you on next year, like what is going to be accomplished between now and then?
Well, who knows? There's a lot of uncertainty in the market right now. In solar in general, there's this tariff situation that's still looming.
Yeah.
It's on pause for right now, which is good. It's going to be a pretty wild economic ride for the next couple years. I believe that, just in general, the economy is probably going to run sideways for a little bit.
It's been running sideways for,
Right.
for the last few years.
Right. And, we saw a boom during COVID. We saw the kind of building, everything kind of went up, and then it kind of flatlined, and here we are. But next year, hopefully we're doing larger scale projects. We really want to do the projects that other contractors can't, because this is a skilled trade, and there's even master electricians that won't get into solar because they don't want to mess with it, right? And it's something where if I believe that the higher your skill level, the more valuable you are, and if we can do a job that lasts us 3 weeks instead of 3 days, and we can make the same profit margins, I mean, we're killing it, and our calendar's booked out for 3 weeks instead of 3 days.
Right.
And now I'm moving on to the next month's calendar, right? And that's how we typically stack jobs out anywhere from 2 to 5 weeks.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. And I'm sure it's probably like commercial work, like, or those bigger jobs, or 3 or 4 week jobs or whatever it might be. Is probably what that looks like. But like you were just talking about the pole barn, like that sounds like a big job, and that was like a residential type of project, right?
We're seeing some pretty large residential projects right now. We're seeing people that want to go off grid. We're seeing off grid systems where maybe they're 2 miles away from the utility pole, and it's going to cost them $40,000 to bring in power.
Wow.
Then they call us, and we charge them $48,000, and they have power, and they don't have to pay for it. Each month. So, it's a crazy industry, and it's going to continue to. They call it the solar coaster, and if just being an electrician gives me so much comfort in the industry, where it's like, even if things do change, even if their tariffs go crazy, what happens is the people that are buying for for purpose instead of budget, they're always buying. It doesn't matter what economy we're in. The demographic that we mainly serve, they're more worried about factor over form. Like they want their stuff, and they want it how they want it, and they're going to tell me how they want it, and I'm not going to argue with them, and I'm going to give them suggestions and try to educate them the best I can. But in any market, it's really just about understanding who your customer is, and we have a good handle on who our customer is. And so when we're talking to engineers, 8 out of 10 engineers, we land the job because we have that technical ability to speak with them on their level.
Yeah, that's huge, right? Gosh. Well, what's one piece of advice that you give to somebody who's thinking about getting into this industry after 10 years worth of experience from yourself? Obviously, you've garnered a lot of different types of gold nuggets and wisdom. What would you tell somebody who's looking to get started?
That's a tough one. That is a tough one, because there's so many lessons that you have to learn along the way. The biggest one is understand where your money's going, because what happens is the length of time from where we get deposits to where jobs are installed can be anywhere from 3 to 5 months, right? So you're talking about 6, 8, 12, 20 weeks. And just knowing that, okay, well, if you sell a job, you need to install a job. And if you're selling more jobs than you're installing, right, that's a problem. And if you're installing more jobs than you're selling, that's also a problem. So, there's a fine balance. And for anybody that's looking to get into it, just know that, as long as you do good work and have integrity in the situation, there will be people that will use you regardless of what size you are. You could be a 2-man show and they'll still use you because they like you.
That's perfect advice, I think. That's awesome, man. Well, Jesse, this has been such a great and informative episode, and thank you for walking us through so much information. Your industry, like that, I love what you just said too. Like if you're selling more than you're installing or vice versa, like that's a problem. I think that's super valuable. So, I mean, thank you again for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
Thanks for having me. You guys are great.
Thanks, brother, for sure, man. Well, that's your camera right there. Where can we find you?
You guys can reach out to us online at proudamericansolar.com. You can reach out to us on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on Google Business. So feel free.
All right. Well, this has been the COS Business Podcast, and we'll see you guys on the next one.